You want to know why China owns the future? It comes down to 17 elements most people have never heard of. Elements that power everything from your smartphone to the fighter jets, protecting your country. And over the last 4 decades, China executed the most brilliant resource takeover in modern history. By the time the world realized what was happening, it was already too late. So how did they pull it off? 1984. While America celebrates its Olympic Games and the Soviet Union tightens its grip on Eastern Europe, a man named Deng is staring at a geological survey in Beijing. The report details 17 metallic elements buried beneath China's soil. Rare earth elements, metals with names like neodymium, dysprosium, terbium, elements that sound like they belong in a science fiction novel. Deng writes something in his notebook that day. A single sentence that will reshape global power. The Middle East has oil. China has rare earths. He understands something the rest of the world doesn't. These obscure elements aren't just rocks in the ground. They're the building blocks of every future technology. The permanent magnets in electric motors. The phosphors in every screen you've ever looked at. The catalysts that refine your gasoline. The precision components in laser-guided missiles. Without rare earths, modern civilization doesn't just slow down, it stops. And here's the thing that makes Deng's realization so powerful. Rare earths aren't actually rare. They exist in deposits all over the planet. The United States has them. Australia has them. Canada, Greenland, parts of Africa. The supply isn't the problem. The problem is getting them out of the ground. Mining rare earths is a nightmare. You have to move thousands of tons of rock to extract a few pounds of usable material. The process requires brutal chemical treatments, acids that eat through equipment, radioactive thorium and uranium mixed right in with the valuable elements, toxic sludge that has to go somewhere, environmental devastation on a scale that makes coal mining look gentle. Every developed nation looks at rare earth extraction and reaches the same conclusion: too dirty, too expensive. Too much political backlash from communities that don't want contaminated groundwater and poisoned soil. So they do what rich countries always do with dangerous, dirty work. They outsource it. And Deng Xiaoping is watching, waiting, because he sees what they don't. Whoever controls the dirty work controls everything that comes after. But understanding the opportunity is one thing. Seizing it is another. China has the deposits. They have the willingness to sacrifice their environment. But they're missing something critical: the knowledge. In 1984, China doesn't know how to extract rare earths sufficiently. They don't have the processing techniques. They don't have the expertise. All of that knowledge sits in one place: America. Specifically, it sits at the Mountain Pass mine in California's Mojave Desert, the largest rare earth operation in the world. For 3 decades, Mountain Pass has been producing the majority of the planet's rare earths. The engineers there have developed proprietary extraction methods, separation techniques that took years of trial and error to perfect, processing secrets that exist nowhere else on Earth. China needs that knowledge, and America is about to hand it to them. 1987. Chinese graduate students start arriving at American universities. They're studying metallurgy, chemical engineering, materials science. They're brilliant, hardworking. Universities are happy to have them. Many of them focus their research on rare earth processing. They study under the professors who consult for Mountain Pass. They learn the chemistry, the engineering principles, the industrial processes that make rare earth extraction possible. American academia welcomes them with open arms. This is the height of scientific cooperation, knowledge sharing, the belief that education transcends borders. Nobody asks what happens when these students go home. But it gets even more direct than that. Chinese engineers start visiting Mountain Pass itself. Technical exchanges, industrial partnerships, the kind of cooperation that happens between nations trying to build economic ties. American executives see a massive emerging market, 1 billion potential customers. Why not share some technical knowledge to build goodwill? The Chinese engineers take detailed notes. They photograph equipment. They ask questions about every step of the process. How do you separate neodymium from praseodymium? What acid concentrations work best? What temperature ranges optimize yield? How do you handle the radioactive waste? The American engineers answer everything. Why wouldn't they? This is standard industry cooperation. Besides, rare earth processing is brutally difficult. Even with the knowledge, it'll take China decades to build competitive operations. Except China isn't planning to compete. They're planning to dominate. Through the late 1980s and early 1990s, hundreds of Chinese scientists and engineers cycle through American universities and facilities. They're absorbing everything, every technique, every trade secret, every hard-won lesson that took American industry 30 years to learn. And then they go home. By 1995, China has something they didn't have a decade earlier. A generation of engineers trained in American methods. Scientists who understand rare earth chemistry at the highest level. The institutional knowledge to build their own processing facilities. America just trained its own replacement. Handed over the blueprint for rare earth dominance. All in the name of international cooperation and market access that would never materialize on American terms. The technology transfer is complete. Now China just needs to put it to use. But understanding the opportunity is one thing. Seizing it is another. 1990. China makes its move. But it doesn't look like a move at all. It looks like desperation. Chinese rare earth companies start flooding the global market with cheap exports. Prices drop, then drop again. Rare earth elements that cost $20 per kilogram suddenly cost $12, then $8, then $5. Western mining executives watch their profit margins evaporate. Shareholders demand answers. Why keep operating mines that lose money every quarter? Why refine elements you can buy cheaper from China than you can produce yourself? One by one, they make the rational decision. They shut down. Mountain Pass, California, the crown jewel of American rare earth production. For decades, it supplied most of the world's rare earths. By 2002, it's closed. Not because the deposit ran dry, because Chinese rare earths are simply too cheap to compete against. Australia scales back. Malaysia reduces operations. The entire Western rare earth industry withers. And here's what nobody realizes at the time. China isn't trying to make money. They're buying market share. Every dollar they lose, selling rare earths below cost, is an investment. An investment in driving out competition, in making the world dependent. The strategy is brilliant because it's patient. There's no dramatic takeover, no military invasion, no political ultimatum. Just relentless economic pressure applied year after year until the competition simply gives up. By 2005, China controls over 90% of global rare earth production, not because they have 90% of the deposits, because they're the only ones still willing to mine them. But controlling the mines is just the beginning. Deng Xiaoping's successors understand something even more crucial. Raw rare earth ore is nearly worthless. The real value comes in what happens next. The processing. Rare earth processing is an art form. You need to separate 17 different elements that are chemically almost identical. It requires proprietary techniques developed over decades, specialized equipment, engineers who understand the process intimately, facilities designed specifically for this work. While the West abandoned rare earth mining, China spent 30 years perfecting rare earth processing. They built the refineries, trained the engineers, developed the institutional knowledge. Every mistake, every improvement, every efficiency gain, all happening in China. By 2010, China doesn't just mine 90% of rare earths, they process 97%. Even the few remaining Western mines have to ship their ore to China for refining. Because nobody else knows how to do it anymore, the trap is set. But China isn't finished. Then comes the move that changes everything. September 7th, 2010. A Chinese fishing trawler collides with Japanese Coast Guard vessels near disputed islands in the East China Sea. Japan detains the Chinese captain. Standard maritime procedure. Diplomatic tensions rise, but nothing the two countries haven't navigated before. Then China does something nobody expects. They stop shipping rare earths to Japan. No official announcement, No dramatic press conference, just quiet instructions to Chinese rare earth exporters: hold the shipments. Suddenly, Japanese factories can't get the neodymium they need for hybrid car motors, the dysprosium for their precision electronics, the terbium for their display screens. Panic spreads through Japanese boardrooms. Production lines start shutting down. The world's third largest economy is being strangled by elements most people can't even pronounce. Japan releases the captain. 11 days later, rare earth shipments resume. The message is sent, crystal clear. China doesn't just control rare earth supply, they're willing to weaponize it. Prices explode. Neodymium costs $30 per kilogram in early 2010. By summer 2011, it hits $345, a tenfold increase in 18 months. Companies that depend on rare earths watch their costs spiral out of control. The West finally wakes up to what's happened. Congressional hearings in Washington, emergency meetings in Brussels, frantic calls to reopen shuttered mines. But here's the problem they're only beginning to understand. You can't just turn rare earth production back on like a light switch. Mountain Pass has been closed for 8 years. The equipment is corroded, the workforce scattered, the expertise retired or working in other industries. Even if you pour money into reopening, you're looking at 5 to 7 years before production resumes, and that's just mining the ore. Processing is a bigger nightmare. The United States hasn't operated a rare earth refinery in over a decade. The engineers who knew how to do it are in their 60s and 70s. The equipment designs are outdated. The facilities don't exist. China spent 30 years building this capability. You can't recreate it in 30 months. But the chokehold goes even deeper than mining and processing, because China made one more move that nobody saw coming. They went after magnets. Rare earth permanent magnets are the heart of modern technology. The tiny, powerful magnets in your smartphone speakers, the massive magnets in wind turbine generators, the precision magnets in electric vehicle motors. Every piece of green technology the West wants to build runs on rare earth magnets. By 2015, China controls 90% of global rare earth magnet production. Not 90% of the materials, 90% of the finished magnets themselves. Here's why that matters. Even if you somehow find rare earths outside China, even if you somehow process them outside China, you still need someone to turn them into magnets. And the only companies that know how to make high-performance rare earth magnets at scale are Chinese. The entire supply chain feeds back to China. Every alternative route hits a Chinese choke point. Mining, processing, manufacturing, they own all three. And they're not done expanding their grip. 2017. While the world focuses on trade wars and tariffs, China is executing something far more sophisticated. They're not just defending their rare earth monopoly, they're making it permanent. A Chinese state-owned mining company lands in Greenland. They're negotiating for the Kvanefjeld deposit, one of the world's largest untapped rare earth reserves. Enough neodymium and dysprosium to potentially challenge Chinese dominance. The kind of deposit that could change everything. China offers infrastructure investments, jobs, technology transfers, everything Greenland's small population needs. The deal is close, very close. Then the United States intervenes. Diplomatic pressure, security concerns, the fear that China will control yet another critical resource. The deal falls apart. China doesn't seem bothered, because they're already moving on to the next target. The Democratic Republic of Congo. China secures mining rights to rare earth deposits in Katanga province. Madagascar. A Chinese company takes control of the Tantalus project. Myanmar. Chinese operations expand rare earth extraction along the border. Australia, home to some of the world's richest deposits. Chinese companies don't buy the mines outright. Too obvious. Instead, they become the primary customers. They sign long-term purchase agreements. They provide financing for mine development. The pattern is brilliant. If China can't own the deposit, they'll own the output. Every ton of rare earth ore mined in Australia gets shipped to China for processing. Every kilogram refined in Malaysia gets sent to China for manufacturing. The supply chain always loops back. But there's another element to China's strategy that's even more insidious: technology transfer requirements. Want to build an electric vehicle factory in China? You need rare earth magnets. Lots of them. China will sell them to you. But there's a condition. You have to share your motor designs, your manufacturing processes, your proprietary technology. Tesla does it. Volkswagen does it. Every major automaker that wants access to the Chinese market does it. They hand over decades of research and development, and Chinese companies absorb it all. By 2020, China isn't just controlling rare earth supply. They're using that control to acquire every piece of technology that depends on rare earths: the electric motors, the wind turbine generators, the defense systems, all of it flowing into Chinese hands. The lockout is complete, not through force, through calculated economic strangulation applied over 40 years. Western nations finally understand what's happened. The United States passes legislation. The Inflation Reduction Act pumps billions into domestic rare earth production. The European Union announces the Critical Raw Materials Act. Australia launches the Critical Minerals Strategy. Emergency funding flows. Mountain Pass reopens in 2023. New deposits are explored in Texas, Wyoming, Alaska. Companies promise revolution. Independence from China. Energy security. But here's the brutal truth they're not telling you. It takes 10 to 15 years to bring a rare earth mine from discovery to production. Environmental reviews, permitting, infrastructure, equipment procurement, workforce training. Even with unlimited money, you can't speed up geology and bureaucracy. And mining is only step one. Building rare earth processing facilities? Another decade. Developing magnet manufacturing at scale? Add 5 more years. The most optimistic projections have the West reaching 20% rare earth self-sufficiency by 2035. 20%. After spending hundreds of billions of dollars. China will still control 80%, and they have a 30-year head start in expertise, infrastructure, and supply chain integration. The window to break Chinese rare earth dominance closed somewhere around 2005, before the processing monopoly solidified, before the magnet manufacturing moved to China, before the institutional knowledge became irreplaceable. Nobody was paying attention, and now the mathematics of the situation are inescapable. But China isn't resting on their monopoly. 2023. A Chinese deep-sea mining vessel drops anchor in the Pacific Ocean, 200 miles east of Hawaii. Robotic submersibles descend 10,000 feet to the ocean floor. They're not looking for oil. They're mapping rare earth deposits. The ocean floor contains more rare earths than every land-based deposit combined. Nodules scattered across the seabed like treasure waiting to be collected. For decades, the technology to harvest them didn't exist. Now it does. And China is leading the race. They've spent 15 years developing deep-sea rare earth extraction technology, specialized drones that can operate at crushing depths, processing systems that work underwater, AI-guided mineral detection that can identify rare earth concentrations from sonar data. The United States has proposals, environmental studies, regulatory frameworks being debated. China has operational vessels. But the ocean floor is just one frontier. There's another that sounds like science fiction, but is closer than you think. The Moon. China's Chang'e missions have been mapping lunar rare earth deposits since 2019. The Moon's regolith contains significant concentrations of rare earths. No atmosphere, no environmental regulations, no activists protesting strip mining. China lands their first sample return mission on the far side of the Moon in 2024. They bring back lunar soil rich in rare earth elements. The analysis confirms what their orbital surveys suggested. The Moon could supply Earth's rare earth needs for centuries. NASA has plans, PowerPoint presentations, budget requests stuck in congressional committees. China has hardware on the lunar surface. Here's what this means. Even if the West somehow catches up on Earth-based rare earth production, even if they build processing facilities and magnet factories, China is already securing the next generation of supply, the resources that will matter in 2050. In 2075, they're not playing the same game everyone else is playing. They're playing 3 games ahead. And there's one final element to China's dominance that makes it truly unbreakable: the expertise gap. Right now, there are approximately 3,000 engineers in the world who deeply understand rare earth processing at industrial scale. How to separate yttrium from europium. How to remove radioactive thorium without destroying the valuable elements. How to optimize acid leaching for maximum yield. One of them. 2,700 of those engineers work in China. Most of them are between 40 and 60 years old. They've spent their entire careers perfecting techniques that aren't written down in textbooks. The knowledge exists in their heads, in their hands. In 30 years of trial and error, Western universities are starting to train rare earth engineers now. The first graduates will enter the workforce in 2028. By the time they've accumulated 20 years of experience, it'll be 2048. The Chinese engineers will be retired, but they'll have trained the next generation. And that generation will train the one after. The institutional knowledge compounds. The gap doesn't close. It widens. You can't download 40 years of expertise. You can't shortcut industrial mastery. You can't wish away the reality of what happens when an entire civilization abandons a critical capability and another civilization spends 4 decades perfecting it. China saw the future in 1984. They made a decision. They paid the price in poisoned rivers and contaminated soil. They played the long game, while everyone else optimized quarterly earnings. They built capabilities that can't be replicated. They secured resources that won't be available to competitors for decades. And now they control the 17 elements that make the modern world possible. The magnets in every electric motor, the phosphors in every display, the catalysts in every green technology, the precision components in every advanced weapon system. Your smartphone exists because China allows it. Your electric vehicle runs because China permits it. Your country's military defends itself with Chinese materials. The renewable energy transition the world desperately needs, it runs through Chinese supply chains. This isn't about economics anymore. It's not even about geopolitics. It's about physics and chemistry and the cold reality that certain elements only exist in certain places, and only one nation spent 40 years learning how to extract them, process them, and manufacture them at the scale civilization demands. Deng Xiaoping's prophecy came true. The Middle East had oil. China has rare earths, and rare earths power everything oil never could.